Welcome to Nighttime Science. Tonight we journey into the depths of the ocean to meet creatures that have existed largely unchanged for millions and in some cases hundreds of millions of years. These are the ocean's living fossils, animals whose bodies tell stories from epochs long before humans walked the earth. As we explore these ancient beings together, let their timeless existence carry you gently into rest. The concept of living fossils. In the year 1859, naturalist Charles Darwin coined a phrase that would echo through the halls of biology for generations to come. He called certain species living fossils, organisms that appeared remarkably similar to their ancestors preserved in stone millions of years ago. The term itself is somewhat imperfect as scientists continue to debate its precise meaning, but it captures something profound about the natural world. These creatures seem to exist outside of time, their forms perfected so long ago that the relentless pressures of evolution have left them largely untouched. When we think of evolution, we often imagine constant change, endless adaptation, species transforming generation after generation. And this is true for much of life on Earth. But in the ocean's depths, in the cold, dark places where light barely penetrates, a different story unfolds. Here, environmental conditions have remained stable for millions of years. The temperature stays cold and constant. The pressure remains crushing and unchanging. Food drifts down from above in a steady, predictable rain of organic matter. In such unchanging environments, there is little pressure to change. The ocean preserves what the land destroys. While continents shift and climates swing between ice ages and tropical warmth, the deep sea maintains its ancient character. Animals that found successful strategies for survival in these depths millions of years ago continue to employ those same strategies today. Their bodies are not frozen in time, not truly. At the molecular level, their DNA continues to accumulate changes with each generation. But the overall blueprint, the architecture of their bodies remains remarkably consistent across vast spans of geological time. Scientists studying these creatures often use the phrase morphological stasis, meaning that the shape and structure of the animal has remained stable. What we see swimming in today's oceans would look familiar to eyes that witnessed the Triassic, the Jurassic, or even earlier periods. These animals are bridges across time, connections to vanished worlds. They survived when countless other species fell into extinction. They witnessed the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, the formation and breakup of supercontinents, the great mass extinctions that reshaped life on Earth. And they persist, quietly going about their business in the waters we are only beginning to understand. The coelacanth, a ghost from the depths. In December of 1938, a fishing trawler working off the coast of South Africa brought up something that should not have existed. Among the catch of common fish lay a creature 5 feet long, covered in heavy scales with fleshy, lobed fins unlike anything the fishermen had ever seen. The specimen was brought to the attention of museum curator Marjorie Courtney Latimer, who recognized it as something extraordinary, though she could not immediately identify it. When she sent a sketch to fish expert J.L.B. Smith, his response was immediate and electrified. This was a coelacanth, a fish thought to have gone extinct 70 million years ago, alongside the last of the dinosaurs. The coelacanth's fossil record stretches back 400 million years to the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes. In the rocks of ancient seabeds, paleontologists had found countless coelacanth fossils, showing a group of fishes that had once been diverse and widespread. But then, around 70 million years ago, they vanished from the fossil record. the assumption was simple and logical. They had died out. The discovery in 1938 proved this assumption wrong. The coelacanth had not gone extinct. It had simply moved to places where it was unlikely to be preserved as fossils or caught by humans. This first modern coelacanth specimen became known as Old Forelegs, and scientists initially believed it might be the direct ancestor of all land-living vertebrates. The fleshy, lobed fins seemed like proto-limbs, suggesting a transitional form between fish and amphibians. While we now know this interpretation was too simple, the coelacanth remains profoundly significant to our understanding of vertebrate evolution. Today, two species of coelacanth exist. Latimeria chalumni lives off the coasts of eastern Africa and Madagascar. Latimeria menadoensis inhabits waters near Indonesia. Both species look remarkably similar to their 100-million-year-old fossil relatives. The coelacanth is a large, heavy fish. Adults can reach lengths of over 6 feet and weigh up to 200 pounds. The body is covered in thick, bony scales that overlap like armor. The coloration ranges from dark blue to brown, helping the fish blend into the dim waters of its habitat. But the most distinctive features are the fins. 8 in total, they extend from the body on fleshy stalks, more like stubby limbs than typical fish fins. These fins move in an alternating pattern, almost like a slow-motion walk. The tail is unusual too, divided into 3 lobes, with the central lobe containing an extension of the spine. These fish live deep, typically between 100 and 500 meters below the surface, though they have been recorded as deep as 1,300 meters. They prefer steep, rocky slopes and underwater canyons where volcanic caves provide shelter during the day. Coelacanths are nocturnal, emerging from their cave refuges at night to hunt. They drift slowly through the water, propelled by gentle movements of those lobed fins using minimal energy. Their bodies contain large amounts of oils and fatty compounds that make them nearly neutrally buoyant, so they expend little effort staying suspended in the water column. Research suggests these remarkable fish can live for a century or more. Growth is slow, about 1 centimeter per year. Females reach sexual maturity only after 20 years. Reproduction is ovoviviparous, meaning the eggs develop inside the mother's body and the young are born live. Gestation may last more than a year, producing litters of perhaps 5 to 25 pups. These life history characteristics, slow growth, late maturity, long gestation, make coelacanth populations vulnerable. The West Indian Ocean population is classified as critically endangered, with perhaps fewer than 500 individuals remaining. The coelacanth's persistence through 400 million years of Earth's history speaks to the stability of the deep ocean environment. While the surface world changed dramatically, while continents drifted and climates shifted, the deep water caves where coelacanths shelter remained largely the same. Food sources, pressure, temperature, all the factors that matter to a deep-dwelling fish maintained their ancient character. The coelacanth found a winning strategy and saw no reason to change it. In the timeless dark of the ocean depths, yesterday is indistinguishable from 400 million years ago. Horseshoe crabs, ancient armor. On beaches along the Atlantic coast of North America, from Maine to the Yucatan, a remarkable annual event unfolds each spring. Under the light of full moons at the peak of high tides, thousands of helmet-shaped creatures emerge from the sea. These are horseshoe crabs, and they are coming to lay eggs in the sand just as their ancestors did 480 million years ago during the Ordovician period. They crawled across ancient seafloors when the first plants had barely begun to colonize land, when the most complex land animals were probably millipedes and early arachnids. Horseshoe crabs are not crabs at all. They are not even crustaceans. They belong to a group called chelicerates, making them more closely related to spiders, scorpions, and ticks than to any true crab. The fossil record shows horseshoe crab ancestors extending back to the Paleozoic era, and the modern forms that exist today appear to have changed remarkably little since the Triassic period. The oldest known horseshoe crab fossil, discovered in Manitoba, Canada, dates to 445 million years ago. These animals have survived 4 major mass extinction events, including the Great Permian extinction that killed more than 90% of marine species. 4 species of horseshoe crab exist today. The Atlantic horseshoe crab, Limulus polyphemus, lives along North and Central American coasts. 3 other species inhabit the coastal waters of Asia: the mangrove horseshoe crab, the coastal horseshoe crab, and the tri-spine horseshoe crab. All 4 species share the same basic body plan that has served their lineage so well across hundreds of millions of years. The horseshoe crab's body is divided into 3 main sections, all protected by a hard exoskeleton. The prosoma, or front section, is the large horseshoe-shaped carapace that gives the animal its name. This dome covers the mouth and legs. Underneath are 5 pairs of walking legs, each ending in small pincers except for the last pair, which are adapted for pushing through sand. The first pair of legs, called chelicerae, help move food toward the mouth. Behind the prosoma is the opisthosoma, a hexagonal middle section where the gills are located. At the rear is a long pointed tail called a telson, not used as a weapon but as a lever to right the animal if it gets flipped onto its back. Perhaps most remarkable are the eyes. Horseshoe crabs have 10 of them, arranged at various points around the carapace. The 2 largest compound eyes sit on either side of the prosoma. These eyes are among the most studied in biology because they are relatively simple yet highly effective. Each compound eye contains about 1,000 light-sensing units called ommatidia. The horseshoe crab's visual system has taught scientists much about how lateral inhibition works, how adjacent cells in a sensory system communicate to enhance contrast and edge detection. This research has had applications in understanding human vision and even in designing certain types of image processing algorithms. Horseshoe crabs are bottom dwellers, using their legs to crawl across sandy or muddy seafloors. They feed on mollusks, worms, and other small creatures, crushing them with the gnathobases, spiny bases of their legs located near the mouth. They may burrow into the sediment to find prey or to rest. Their blue blood, which gains its color from copper-based hemocyanin rather than iron-based hemoglobin, carries oxygen efficiently even in the low oxygen conditions sometimes found in bottom sediments. This blood has become valuable to modern medicine in an unexpected way. Horseshoe crab blood contains cells called amoebocytes that react powerfully to bacterial endotoxins, clotting around any contamination. Scientists have developed a test using horseshoe crab blood extract, called the Limulus amoebocyte lysate test, to check medical equipment and injectable drugs for bacterial contamination. Each year, hundreds of thousands of horseshoe crabs are collected, bled, and released. While most survive, this practice, combined with habitat loss and harvesting for bait, has put pressure on some populations. Watching horseshoe crabs during their spawning aggregations is like watching a scene from the Paleozoic. The males are slightly smaller than females and possess modified front legs for gripping the female's carapace. A single female may have multiple males clustered around her as she digs into the sand and deposits clusters of tiny green eggs. She may lay 80,000 eggs in a single season. Most of these will never hatch. Shorebirds, particularly red knots and ruddy turnstones, time their northward migrations to coincide with horseshoe crab spawning. The beaches become feeding grounds with thousands of birds gorging on the protein-rich eggs, fueling their journey to Arctic breeding grounds. The eggs that survive hatch into larvae that look like tiny versions of adults but without tails. They molt repeatedly, growing with each shed of the exoskeleton. It takes the horseshoe crab about a decade to reach maturity, and they may live for 20 to 40 years in total. This relatively long lifespan and slow maturation are typical of ancient lineages, strategies that work well in stable environments where there is no advantage to rapid reproduction. The chambered nautilus, living spiral. In the warm waters of the Indo-Pacific around coral reefs and rocky slopes lives an animal that has remained largely unchanged for more than 500 million years. The chambered nautilus belongs to a group of mollusks called cephalopods, making it a relative of octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish. But while those other cephalopods are highly derived and adapted to active, intelligent hunting, the nautilus has retained an ancient body plan. It is the only living cephalopod with a true external shell, a reminder that the cephalopod lineage once included thousands of shelled species that dominated ancient seas. The nautilus shell is one of nature's most elegant structures. It spirals outward from the center in a logarithmic curve, each whorl slightly larger than the last, creating a shape that has fascinated mathematicians and artists for centuries. The shell can reach diameters of about 10 inches with coloration that is striking and purposeful. The outer surface is marked with stripes of white and reddish-brown, providing camouflage when viewed from the side. The inner surface of the shell is smooth, pearly white, and iridescent, made of nacre, the same material that lines oyster shells and forms pearls. Inside this shell, the structure becomes even more remarkable. The shell is divided into chambers separated by walls called septa. The nautilus lives only in the largest, outermost chamber. The other chambers, some 30 to 40 in a mature animal, are empty except for small amounts of gas and fluid. A tube called the siphuncle runs through all the chambers, allowing the nautilus to regulate the gas and fluid content. By adjusting the proportions, the nautilus controls its buoyancy, rising or sinking in the water column without expending energy for constant swimming. The nautilus itself emerges from the shell aperture, revealing a head with as many as 90 tentacles. Unlike the sucker-covered tentacles of octopuses and squid, nautilus tentacles are smooth, covered with ridges and grooves that provide grip. The tentacles are grouped into two circles, an outer circle of digital tentacles used for sensing and manipulating, and an inner circle of tentacles that help capture prey. These tentacles can retract completely into the shell when the animal withdraws for safety. At the center of the tentacles sits a hard, parrot-like beak used for crushing prey. The nautilus has relatively simple eyes compared to other cephalopods. While octopuses and squid have evolved camera-type eyes remarkably similar to vertebrate eyes with lenses and retinas, the nautilus eye is more primitive. It works on a pinhole principle, with a small aperture opening directly to the retina but no lens to focus light. This design provides a dimmer, less detailed image than a lens-based eye, but it functions adequately for the nautilus's lifestyle. despite the simple eye, nautiluses are far from simple creatures. Research has shown they possess learning and memory capabilities that rival those of octopuses. In experimental settings, nautiluses have been trained to navigate mazes, remember the locations of food sources, and associate visual cues with rewards. This cognitive sophistication is remarkable for an animal with such an ancient body plan, suggesting that intelligence in cephalopods evolved early in the group's history. Nautiluses are active primarily at night. During the day, they remain in deeper water, perhaps 2,000 feet down, resting on the seafloor or drifting in the darkness. As evening approaches, they rise to shallower depths, perhaps 300 feet, to hunt along reef walls and slopes. They are opportunistic predators, feeding on crustaceans, fish, and carrion. Using their tentacles to probe into crevices, they search for sleeping or hiding prey. Once captured, prey is brought to the beak and consumed. Movement is achieved through jet propulsion. The nautilus draws water into the shell chamber and expels it forcefully through a flexible siphon called the hyponum. By directing the hyponum, the nautilus can steer, moving forward, backward, or turning. The motion is gentle and deliberate, nothing like the rapid jetting of squid. The nautilus is a creature of patience, drifting more than swimming, conserving energy in an environment where food may be scarce. The fossil record shows that nautiloid cephalopods were once incredibly diverse. During the Paleozoic era, thousands of species with straight, curved, and spiral shells filled the world's oceans. Some grew to enormous sizes, with shells longer than a human is tall. But mass extinctions, particularly the one at the end of the Permian, decimated this diversity. Only a few lineages survived, and today just 6 species of nautilus and 1 species of Alonautilus remain. These living species face modern challenges their ancestors never encountered. Nautilus shells are prized for their beauty, collected for decoration and jewelry. Overharvesting has caused population declines, particularly in the Philippines and Indonesia. International trade is now regulated, and the nautilus is listed as threatened under United States law. Conservation efforts focus on understanding their populations, reproductive rates, and habitat needs. The nautilus has survived for 500 million years. The question now is whether it can survive us. Goblin and frilled sharks, deep-sea relics. The deep ocean is not a single uniform environment. It encompasses a range of habitats, from the dimly lit twilight zone where a little sunlight penetrates, to the midnight zone where no light reaches at all, to the abyssal plains that stretch across most of the ocean floor. In these depths live sharks that seem lifted from prehistoric seas, their bodies showing features long since modified or lost in shallow water species. The goblin shark inhabits the upper continental slopes, seamounts, and submarine canyons at depths typically between 800 and 3,000 feet. It can dive deeper when needed, with records placing individuals as far down as 4,300 feet. This species belongs to the family Mitsukuridae, a lineage stretching back 125 million years to the Cretaceous period. The goblin shark is the only living member of its family. All its relatives are known only from fossils. The appearance of a goblin shark is distinctive and somewhat unsettling. The body is flabby and soft, colored pale pink due to blood vessels visible through the translucent skin. The fins are small and rounded, suggesting a creature that swims slowly and deliberately. But the most striking feature is the head. A long, flat, blade-like projection extends forward from the skull, overhanging the mouth. This rostrum, as it is called, is soft and covered with sensory pores containing ampullae of Lorenzini, electroreceptors that detect the weak electrical fields produced by living organisms. The rostrum acts like a biological metal detector sweeping through the water ahead of the shark to locate hidden prey. Below and behind the rostrum sits the mouth, equipped with numerous pointed teeth. The teeth are long and thin, somewhat fang-like, arranged in rows. But the jaw itself is the goblin shark's secret weapon. The jaws are highly protrusible, meaning they can extend dramatically forward from the head. When the shark detects prey, it can thrust its jaws out with remarkable speed, far faster than its overall sluggish movements would suggest. The lower jaw drops, creating a powerful suction while the jaws shoot forward, engulfing the prey before it can react. After capture, the jaws retract back into their normal position under the rostrum. This feeding adaptation makes sense for a slow-moving predator. Goblin sharks lack the muscular, streamlined build needed for chasing down fast prey. Their bodies have poorly developed muscles and weak skeletons with reduced calcification. The liver, however, is large and filled with low-density oils, providing buoyancy. The shark drifts more than swims, using minimal energy, approaching prey slowly and silently before unleashing that sudden jaw strike. Diet studies based on stomach contents from the few specimens examined show that goblin sharks eat a variety of deep-sea fish, including rat tails and dragonfishes, as well as squid, crustaceans, and occasional bottom-dwelling species. The mix suggests the shark hunts both near the seafloor and higher in the water column, opportunistically taking whatever prey it encounters in the sparse deep-sea environment. Goblin sharks are rarely seen. Since the first specimen was described in 1898, only a few dozen individuals have been documented, most of them caught accidentally in deep-sea fishing nets. The species has a wide distribution recorded from the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, but it remains one of the more mysterious large sharks. Reproduction is presumed to be ovoviviparous, with young developing inside eggs retained within the mother's body, but no pregnant females have been thoroughly studied. The frilled shark is, if anything, even more ancient in appearance. The body is long and eel-like, very different from the typical shark silhouette. Adults reach lengths of about 6.5 feet, with females slightly larger than males. The skin is dark gray or brown. The head is broad and flattened, with the mouth positioned at the very front, not underneath as in most sharks. This terminal mouth gives the frilled shark a snake-like appearance, enhanced by the way it swims with sinuous serpentine movements. The name frilled shark comes from the gills. 6 pairs of gill slits line the throat, a primitive number. Most modern sharks have 5 gill slits. These slits extend low around the throat, and the first pair nearly meets below the head. The edges of the gill tissues form frilled, ruffled structures that give the shark its common name. The teeth are equally distinctive, arranged in 25 rows in the upper jaw, and around the same number in the lower jaw. Each tooth has 3 sharp, recurved points, looking somewhat like tiny tridents. These teeth are designed to snag and hold slippery prey, particularly squid and fish. Frilled sharks inhabit similar depths to goblin sharks, typically between 1,200 and 5,000 feet, though they can be found in shallower water occasionally. The species is distributed widely across both Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In 2009, scientists described a second species, the African frilled shark, found off the coast of southern Africa. This species is smaller, with a longer head and fewer vertebrae, but otherwise similar. The frilled shark's lineage dates back at least 80 million years, and possibly as far as 300 million years. Fossil evidence is fragmentary, consisting mostly of isolated teeth, but the basic body form appears ancient. The frilled shark belongs to a group called Chlamydoselaciformes, considered one of the most primitive shark lineages still in existence. Very little is known about frilled shark behavior. Nearly all observations come from captured specimens, often in poor condition. The sharks are thought to spend much of their time near the seafloor, lying in wait or swimming slowly, searching for prey. When hunting, the shark may coil its body and then lunge forward, using its flexible spine and numerous teeth to capture prey. The large, expandable jaws can accommodate surprisingly large meals relative to the shark's body size. Reproduction is ovoviviparous with long gestation periods. Estimates suggest gestation may last 3.5 years, one of the longest of any vertebrate. Litter sizes are small, typically between 2 and 15 pups. This reproductive strategy, long gestation and few offspring, is common in deep-sea sharks and reflects the stability but also the scarcity of resources in their environment. Both goblin and frilled sharks exist in realms beyond casual human observation. The deep sea is the largest habitat on Earth, covering more than half the planet's surface, yet it remains largely unexplored. These sharks, unchanged for millions of years, remind us that the deep ocean is not empty but filled with wonders we are only beginning to discover. Sea lilies and crinoids. Flower animals. At first glance, they appear to be plants. Graceful feather-like arms extend from a central cup, swaying gently in the current, resembling flowers or ferns growing from the seafloor. But sea lilies and their relatives, the feather stars, are animals. They belong to the phylum Echinodermata, making them relatives of starfish, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. They are filter feeders, catching tiny particles of food from the water flowing past. And they are ancient, with a fossil record extending back more than 480 million years to the Ordovician period, 300 million years before the first dinosaurs. The term crinoid encompasses all members of the class Crinoidea, including both stalked sea lilies and free-swimming feather stars. The basic body plan has remained remarkably consistent across vast stretches of time. A central calyx or cup contains the vital organs. From the calyx extend 5 arms, though in many species these arms branch, creating 10, 20, or even more arm-like structures. These arms are lined with tiny hair-like projections called pinnules, giving them a feathery appearance. The pinnules contain tube feet covered in mucus that traps food particles drifting by. Once trapped, tiny hairs called cilia move the particles down grooves in the arms toward the mouth at the center of the calyx. Sea lilies, the stalked crinoids, attach to the seafloor via a stem composed of stacked disc-shaped plates called columnals. These columnals are made of calcite and fit together like a stack of coins held by flexible ligaments. The stem can be quite long in some fossil species, reaching lengths of 20 meters, though modern species typically have shorter stems. The stem is not rigid but flexible, allowing the animal to bend and sway with currents without breaking. At the base, the stem ends in a structure called a holdfast that cements the animal to rock or other hard surfaces. Some species can detach and reattach, moving to new locations if conditions change. Feather stars or comatulids have no stem in the adult stage. They begin life attached to a stem like sea lilies, but as they mature, they break free and become mobile. Instead of a long stem, Feather stars have a series of small appendages called cirri on their underside, used to grasp onto surfaces. They can swim by coordinating movements of their arms, creating a pulse that propels them upward. They can also crawl along the seafloor using the cirri. This mobility allows feather stars to respond to changing conditions, moving to better feeding spots or escaping predators. The fossil record of crinoids is extraordinarily rich. During the Paleozoic era, particularly in the Carboniferous period, crinoids were so abundant that their remains formed thick layers of limestone. In some places, fossil hunters find entire slabs of rock composed almost entirely of crinoid stem segments, called crinoidal limestone. These beds represent ancient seafloors where crinoid forests swayed in the currents, much like kelp forests today. The diversity was staggering. More than 6,000 fossil crinoid species have been described, showing a vast array of forms. The end Permian extinction, the most severe in Earth's history, nearly wiped out the crinoids. As many as 96% of marine species disappeared during this catastrophic event about 252 million years ago. Crinoid diversity collapsed. Possibly only a single genus survived. But from this bottleneck, the group slowly recovered. Post-Permian crinoids never regained the morphological variety of their Paleozoic ancestors, but they diversified at the species level. Today, approximately 660 species exist worldwide, inhabiting waters from the shallows to the deep sea. Modern crinoids are found in all oceans. Some species live in shallow tropical waters, their colorful arms displayed on coral reefs. Others inhabit the deep sea thousands of meters down, where no light penetrates. Colors vary widely from purples and reds to yellows, greens, and oranges. The coloration serves various purposes, including camouflage and possibly warning predators of toxic compounds in the tissues. Many crinoids are toxic to eat, containing chemicals that deter fish and other predators. Crinoids are primarily nocturnal or active during twilight. During the day, they may curl their arms protectively or hide in crevices. At night, they extend their arms fully to maximize the surface area available for capturing food. The tube feet on the pinnules produce sticky mucus that traps phytoplankton, zooplankton, detritus, and bacteria. The captured particles are wrapped in mucus and transported along the arm grooves to the mouth. Digestion occurs in a U-shaped gut within the calyx, and waste is expelled through an anus located near the mouth, on the upper surface of the calyx. Reproduction can be sexual or asexual. Many species can regenerate lost arms, and some can reproduce by splitting themselves in two, each half regenerating the missing parts. Sexual reproduction involves releasing eggs and sperm into the water, where fertilization occurs externally. The larvae are free-swimming and planktonic, drifting in the currents for a period before settling and metamorphosing into the adult form. This planktonic stage allows crinoids to disperse widely, colonizing new habitats far from their parents. In recent years, scientists have rediscovered ancient symbiotic relationships. In the fossil record from hundreds of millions of years ago, paleontologists found evidence of corals growing on crinoid stems. These associations were thought to be extinct. But in 2017, researchers exploring deep waters off the coast of Japan found the relationship alive and well. Small corals were growing on the stalks of living sea lilies just as they had in the Paleozoic seas. The corals benefit by being elevated off the seafloor, gaining access to stronger currents and more food. The benefit to the crinoid, if any, remains unclear. though the added weight might actually help stabilize the animal in currents. Crinoids have persisted through multiple mass extinctions, continental rearrangements, and dramatic climate shifts. Their survival strategy involves simplicity and efficiency. They require relatively little energy, feeding on the most abundant food source in the ocean, tiny particles suspended in the water. They have few specialized organs, reducing the number of things that can go wrong. They can regenerate damage. They reproduce prolifically. In the slow-moving waters of the deep sea, where competition is limited and conditions are stable, this ancient strategy continues to work as well as it did 500 million years ago. Sturgeon, river dinosaurs. In rivers and coastal waters across the northern hemisphere, there swim fish whose lineage stretches back more than 170 million years to the early Jurassic period. Sturgeon are often called living fossils because their basic body form has changed little since that time. They are among the largest freshwater fish in the world, with some species reaching lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding a ton. They are also among the most endangered, victims of overfishing, habitat destruction, and the construction of dams that block their migrations. 27 species of sturgeon exist worldwide, grouped into 5 genera. They inhabit rivers, lakes, and coastal marine waters in North America, Europe, and Asia. Some species spend their entire lives in freshwater. Others, called anadromous species, spend most of their lives in the ocean but return to freshwater rivers to spawn, much like salmon. The fish have undergone relatively little anatomical change over vast periods of time, maintaining a suite of primitive characteristics that set them apart from most modern fish. The sturgeon skeleton is mostly cartilage rather than bone. This is unusual for a ray-finned fish, as most species in this group have bony skeletons. The cartilaginous skeleton is lighter and more flexible, possibly an advantage in the bottom-dwelling lifestyle sturgeon pursue. However, the skull and parts of the pectoral girdle do contain some bone, and the skin is reinforced with bony plates called scutes arranged in 5 rows along the body. These scutes act as armor, protecting the fish from predators and from scraping against rocks as the sturgeon feeds along the river bottom. The head is distinctively elongated and flattened, with the mouth located on the underside near the end of a protruding snout. 4 barbels, sensory whisker-like structures hang down in front of the mouth. As the sturgeon swims along the bottom, dragging its barbels through the sediment, it detects the chemical signatures of buried invertebrates, small fish, and other prey. When food is located, the sturgeon extends its tube-like mouth downward and sucks in the prey along with sediment and water. The mouth is toothless, at least in adults. Young sturgeon have small teeth that disappear as they mature. Instead of chewing, the sturgeon crushes food against bony plates in the throat before swallowing. The tail of a sturgeon is heterocercal, meaning the upper lobe is larger than the lower lobe, and the spine extends into the upper lobe. This tail shape is considered primitive and is shared with sharks. Most modern bony fish have homocercal tails with symmetrical lobes. The heterocercal tail generates lift as the sturgeon swims, which might seem disadvantageous for a bottom-dwelling fish, but it actually helps the sturgeon maintain position just above the substrate while feeding, reducing the energy needed to stay in position. Sturgeon are slow-growing and long-lived. Growth rates vary by species and environmental conditions, but many sturgeon grow only a few centimeters per year. They may take 10 to 20 years or more to reach sexual maturity. Once mature, they do not spawn every year. Females may spawn only once every 2 to 6 years, while males spawn more frequently, perhaps every 2 to 3 years. This reproductive pattern means that sturgeon populations are slow to recover from overfishing or other disturbances. During spawning runs, sturgeon migrate from their feeding grounds to specific spawning habitats, typically in freshwater rivers. Anadromous species may travel hundreds of miles upriver, swimming against strong currents. They seek out sections of river with clean gravel or rocky bottoms and sufficient oxygen levels. Females release thousands to millions of eggs depending on their size. A large female might produce several million eggs in a single spawn. Males release milk simultaneously, and fertilization occurs externally in the water. The eggs are adhesive, sticking to rocks and gravel where they develop. Development is temperature dependent, but typically takes several days to a week. The larvae that hatch are tiny, only about a centimeter long, with a yolk sac that sustains them for the first few days of life. As they grow, they begin feeding on microscopic invertebrates. Juveniles may spend months or even years in freshwater before migrating to estuaries or the ocean, depending on the species. Historically, sturgeon populations were enormous. In North America, Atlantic sturgeon crowded rivers along the East Coast. In Europe, sturgeon were caught in nearly every major river system. In Russia, the Volga River and Caspian Sea supported huge populations of beluga and other sturgeon species. But the fish's value to humans proved nearly disastrous. Sturgeon meat is prized. Smoked sturgeon is a delicacy. But even more valuable are the eggs processed into caviar, one of the world's most expensive luxury foods. Commercial fishing for sturgeon began in earnest in the 1800s and escalated through the 20th century. Populations crashed. Many rivers where sturgeon once spawned became blocked by dams. Habitat degradation, pollution, and changes in river flow further stressed the remaining populations. Today, many sturgeon species are critically endangered. Some may already be extinct in the wild. International agreements now regulate caviar trade, and fishing for most sturgeon species is strictly controlled or banned entirely. Conservation efforts are underway in many regions. Fish hatcheries raise juvenile sturgeon for release into rivers, attempting to rebuild populations. Dams are being modified with fish passages, though sturgeon are not strong jumpers like salmon and require different solutions. Habitat restoration projects focus on protecting and improving spawning grounds. The success of these efforts remains uncertain, but there is hope. Sturgeon have survived for more than 170 million years. With careful management, perhaps they can survive us as well. Greenland sharks, the Methuselahs. In the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, at depths ranging from the surface to more than 7,000 feet, lives a shark that may be the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. The Greenland shark can live for 400 years, possibly longer. A Greenland shark swimming today might have been born during the reign of King James the Thornen of England. Some of these sharks alive now were swimming before the United States existed as a nation. The slow passage of centuries is nothing to a Greenland shark. The Greenland shark is a large animal, typically reaching lengths of 13 to 16 feet, though individuals over 20 feet have been recorded. The body is heavy and cylindrical, colored dark gray, brown, or black. The skin texture is rough, covered in tiny tooth-like scales called denticles. The head is small relative to the body size, with a rounded snout and small eyes. The fins are relatively small and rounded, suggesting a slow swimmer. And indeed, the Greenland shark is one of the slowest swimming fish known, averaging speeds of only about 1 foot per second, with maximum speeds barely exceeding 2 feet per second. This extreme slowness might seem like a disadvantage. How does such a sluggish shark catch fast-moving prey like seals? The diet of Greenland sharks includes fish, squid, crabs, jellyfish, and marine mammals, including seals and occasionally small cetaceans. Stomach contents from examined specimens have revealed surprising finds. Remains of polar bears, reindeer, and horses, though these are likely scavenged from carcasses rather than hunted. The leading theory is that Greenland sharks are ambush predators that hunt sleeping or weakened animals. Seals must surface to breathe, and they sleep in the water, drifting or resting at depth. A Greenland shark could approach slowly, almost imperceptibly, taking advantage of the seal's sleep or illness. The sharks also likely rely on scavenging. In the deep, cold waters they inhabit, organic matter sinks from above. Whale carcasses, dead fish, any animal that dies may eventually settle to depths where Greenland sharks patrol. The sharks have adapted to long periods between meals, storing energy in their massive livers. The liver can account for 20% or more of the shark's body weight and is filled with oils that provide both buoyancy and a long-term energy reserve. The extreme longevity of Greenland sharks was not confirmed until 2016, when a team of researchers used radiocarbon dating of eye lens proteins to estimate ages. The lens of a vertebrate eye grows throughout life, adding layers like a tree adds rings. But unlike tree rings, these layers cannot be counted visually. The scientists instead used radiocarbon dating, specifically looking for the signature of nuclear bomb testing in the 1950s, which released large amounts of carbon-14 into the atmosphere and oceans. This radiocarbon pulse provides a time marker. By examining the eye lenses of 28 female Greenland sharks, caught accidentally in fishing gear, the researchers determined that the largest individual, measuring 16 feet long, was likely around 392 years old, with an uncertainty range of plus or minus 120 years. Even at the conservative lower estimate, this shark was at least 272 years old. Smaller sharks showed correspondingly younger ages, and the data revealed another striking fact. Greenland sharks do not reach sexual maturity until they are approximately 150 years old. This extraordinarily late maturity, combined with slow growth and low reproductive rates, makes Greenland sharks extremely vulnerable to overfishing. Females likely give birth to live young, a process called ovoviviparity, after a gestation period estimated at 8 to 18 years. Litter sizes are uncertain but probably small, perhaps 10 pups or fewer. If a female reproduces only once every decade or two after reaching maturity at 150, the number of offspring produced over her lifetime, while potentially reaching into the hundreds, is still small relative to her lifespan. The secret to the Greenland shark's longevity appears to lie in its metabolism. Living in water just above freezing, between -1 and 7 degrees Celsius, the shark's bodily processes run at an extremely slow pace. The cold slows everything: growth, movement, aging. The shark's tissues have adapted to function efficiently at these low temperatures, with proteins and enzymes optimized for the cold. Recent genomic studies have identified genes associated with DNA repair that are present in multiple copies in the Greenland shark genome, possibly contributing to the shark's ability to maintain cellular integrity over centuries. The slow metabolism explains the slow growth rate, estimated at less than 1 centimeter per year. It takes a century for the shark to reach 4 to 5 meters in length. This glacial pace of life extends to all aspects of the animal's biology. Wounds heal slowly, infections persist for extended periods. Heart rates are extraordinarily low, perhaps as few as 2 to 6 beats per minute. Greenland sharks have other adaptations to their cold environment. Their tissues contain high levels of trimethylamine oxide, a chemical compound that acts as a natural antifreeze, preventing ice crystals from forming in the cells. This same compound, however, makes the meat toxic to humans. Trimethylamine oxide breaks down into trimethylamine, a compound that causes symptoms similar to extreme intoxication. In Iceland and Greenland, the traditional dish hakkarl is made from Greenland shark meat that has been fermented and dried for several months to break down the toxins. Even so, the resulting food is described as having an intensely strong ammonia smell and an acquired taste. Another curious feature of Greenland sharks is the parasites that often attach to their eyes. A small copepod crustacean, Omatocoita elongata, frequently embeds itself in the shark's cornea, dangling a few centimeters in front of the eye. For many years, scientists believed Greenland sharks were nearly blind, partially due to these parasites. However, recent research suggests the sharks retain functional vision despite the parasites. The parasites themselves may be bioluminescent, potentially attracting prey to the vicinity of the shark's mouth, though this hypothesis remains unconfirmed. Greenland sharks are listed as vulnerable to extinction by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. While they are not targeted by commercial fisheries at present, they are frequently caught as bycatch in nets set for other species. Their slow growth and late maturity mean that even low levels of fishing mortality can drive populations into decline. Studying these sharks is challenging due to the depths and remoteness of their habitat, and many basic aspects of their biology remain unknown. But the fact that they can live for centuries makes each individual profoundly valuable. A shark born in the 17th century carries within it the genetic and experiential history of 400 years. Losing such an animal is losing a unique archive of oceanic life. Why they survive, the science of stasis. Evolution is often presented as a story of constant change, of relentless adaptation and innovation. And for many lineages, this is true. But for the species we have explored tonight, evolution has taken a different path. These animals have found stable niches in stable environments, and the evolutionary pressure to change has been minimal. Understanding why some species remain unchanged while others undergo rapid modification is a central question in evolutionary biology. One key factor is environmental stability. The deep ocean where many living fossils reside changes slowly compared to terrestrial or shallow marine environments. Temperature variations are minimal. Light levels, or the lack of light, remain constant. The basic availability of food, while sparse, is predictable. Compare this to a terrestrial environment where seasons change, ice ages come and go, forests turn to grasslands and back to forests. On land, the pressure to adapt to changing conditions is intense. In the deep sea, there is little advantage to change if the environment itself is unchanging. A second factor is the generalist versus specialist divide. Many living fossils are generalists, capable of exploiting a wide range of food sources and surviving under varied conditions. The Greenland shark eats whatever it encounters, from fish to seals to carrion. The nautilus hunts various crustaceans and fish and will scavenge. Horseshoe crabs feed on many types of invertebrates. Generalists are buffered against environmental fluctuations because they do not depend on any single resource. Specialists, on the other hand, are highly adapted to specific conditions. If those conditions change, specialists must adapt or go extinct. But generalists can simply shift their diet or behavior slightly and continue on. A third factor relates to life history strategies. Many living fossils are slow-growing, long-lived, and late-maturing. These traits are advantageous in stable, resource-limited environments. Rapid growth and early reproduction require substantial energy, which may not be available in the deep sea or other stable but unproductive habitats. Slow growth conserves energy. Long lifespans increase the total number of reproductive opportunities over a lifetime, compensating for infrequent reproduction. Late maturity allows individuals to grow large before reproducing, and larger individuals often produce more offspring. However, these life history traits also make living fossils vulnerable to modern human activities. Slow-growing species cannot quickly replace individuals lost to fishing or habitat destruction. Late maturity means many years pass before an individual can contribute to the next generation. If too many individuals are removed before reaching maturity, populations spiral into decline. This is why so many ancient lineages, having survived for hundreds of millions of years, now face endangerment or extinction due to human pressures that have existed for only decades or centuries. A fourth factor is the concept of morphological constraint. Some body plans are so successful and so finely tuned to their function that any deviation results in decreased fitness. The five-rayed symmetry of echinoderms, including crinoids, has persisted for over 500 million years. The armored body of the horseshoe crab, the spiraled shell of the nautilus, the basic shark form of the Greenland shark. All of these represent solutions to biological challenges that are difficult to improve upon. Evolution is not goal-directed. It does not strive for perfection. But when a lineage stumbles upon a highly effective design, natural selection maintains it. Genetic studies of living fossils reveal that while their morphology may be stable, their DNA continues to accumulate changes at rates comparable to other organisms. This means that the genetic distance between a modern coelacanth and its Cretaceous ancestor is substantial, even though they look nearly identical. The genes that control overall body form, called developmental or regulatory genes, have remained conserved, maintaining the same basic blueprint. But many other genes, those involved in biochemistry, immune function, and other non-structural aspects, have evolved. In other words, living fossils are not evolutionarily frozen. They have been evolving all along, just not in ways that dramatically alter their outward appearance. This distinction is important. It means that living fossils are not evolutionary dead ends or inferior designs. They are successful, ongoing lineages that have found a winning formula. The deep-sea coelacanth is as well adapted to its environment as any fast-evolving surface fish is to its own. The coelacanth simply lives in a place where the rules are different, where the ancient ways still work. Finally, there is an element of chance. Survival through mass extinctions, the events that have punctuated Earth's history, often comes down to luck as much as adaptation. When the asteroid struck at the end of the Cretaceous, killing the non-avian dinosaurs, it did not preferentially spare the best or most advanced species. It spared those that happened to be in the right place at the right time, those with characteristics that coincidentally helped them survive the immediate catastrophe and its aftermath. Deep-sea animals may have been shielded from the worst effects of some extinction event simply by being deep. Temperature fluctuations, acid rain, darkness from impact debris, these might have been less severe at depth. Thus, deep-sea lineages, including many living fossils, managed to persist when their shallow water relatives perished. The study of living fossils illuminates the many pathways evolution can take. Change is not inherently superior to stasis. Both are strategies. Both can lead to long-term success. The lineages we have explored tonight are testaments to the power of finding a stable solution and sticking with it across unimaginable spans of time. Conclusion and reflection. We have journeyed tonight through time as much as through water. We have met the coelacanth, a ghost from the age of fishes swimming in depths where few eyes can see it. We have watched horseshoe crabs crawl ashore in ancient ritual, their armor unchanged since the Ordovician. We have admired the Nautilus, its perfect spiral, a mathematical and biological marvel honed over 500 million years. We have encountered the goblin shark and the frilled shark, denizens of the deep carrying forms from the age of dinosaurs. We have seen the delicate beauty of sea lilies swaying in the current, the sturdy presence of sturgeon navigating rivers older than our species. And we have pondered the Greenland shark, swimming through centuries as we pass through decades. These creatures challenge our assumptions about progress and advancement. In popular understanding, evolution is often portrayed as a ladder, with simple organisms at the bottom and complex, advanced organisms like humans at the top. But evolution is not a ladder. It is a branching tree, or better yet, a vast bush with countless branches extending in all directions. There is no top. There are only different solutions to the problem of survival. The horseshoe crab's solution is as valid as the human solution. The Nautilus is not inferior to the octopus simply because it has an external shell. Different environments, different strategies, equal validity. What these ancient lineages teach us is humility. We are newcomers. Homo sapiens has existed for perhaps 300,000 years, a blink compared to the hundreds of millions of years these other lineages have endured. We have achieved much in our brief time, developing complex societies, technology, art, science. But we have also become a force of disruption unprecedented in Earth's history. We have altered the climate, changed the chemistry of the oceans, rearranged the flow of rivers, and eliminated countless species. The survivors of ancient lineages now face challenges they have never encountered before. Challenges that arise not from geological or astronomical events, but from the activities of a single species. The conservation of living fossils is not just about saving interesting animals, though they are certainly that. It is about preserving connections to deep time, maintaining the continuity of lineages that stretch back to the earliest chapters of complex life on Earth. When a sturgeon population goes extinct, we lose more than a source of caviar. We lose a living link to the Jurassic. When a Nautilus species disappears, the unbroken thread connecting the present to the Cambrian is severed. These losses diminish the richness of life and impoverish our understanding of natural history. Yet there is reason for hope. Conservation efforts, while underfunded and often acting almost too late, have achieved successes. Atlantic sturgeon populations, though still endangered, are showing signs of recovery in some rivers thanks to fishing restrictions and habitat restoration. Nautilus trade is now regulated internationally, providing some protection from overharvesting. Marine protected areas are being established in deep-sea habitats, offering refuge for goblin sharks, frilled sharks, and other deep-dwelling species. Scientists continue to study these animals, revealing their secrets and informing conservation strategies. For those of us not directly involved in marine conservation, there are still ways to help. supporting organizations that protect ocean habitats, making sustainable seafood choices, reducing plastic consumption and other pollution, and advocating for policies that address climate change. All of these actions contribute to healthier oceans. Education matters too. When people learn about the wonders of the deep sea, about the creatures that have persisted for hundreds of millions of years, they are more likely to care about their preservation. As we close our journey tonight, consider the quiet persistence of these ancient forms. In the darkness of the deep sea, far from human observation, a coelacanth drifts through a volcanic cave, its lobed fins moving in slow rhythm. On a moonlit beach, horseshoe crabs emerge to lay eggs as they have for 500 million years. In the cold Arctic waters, a Greenland shark glides through the twilight, centuries old, patient, enduring. A nautilus adjusts its buoyancy and rises through the water column as evening falls. These creatures ask nothing of us except to be allowed to continue their ancient ways. It is a small request given all they have survived, all they represent. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider subscribing to Nighttime Science for more journeys into the calm and fascinating realms of science. And if you found tonight's documentary helpful for sleep or learning, a like is always appreciated. Until next time, may you rest well, and may your dreams be filled with the timeless wonders of the ocean deep.